welcome. You're tuned into the best in paranormal podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. Along with me, the one, the only Mr. Tim Dennis. Hello, Tim.
Hey there.
We've got an interesting show lined up today. I want to just kind of mention up front to listeners for trigger warnings. We're obviously going to be speaking to a person who communicates with the dead. And we're going to talk about the focus of dealing with people that have passed away tragically and sometimes at their own hand. So I just want people to be aware of that going in. I know that can be a trigger for a lot of people dealing with that, but hopefully in this you'll hear answers and get some insights to the afterlife for these circumstances. Have we been misled all these years by the concepts of what happens in these cases? We're going to try to understand that, filter through it, and understand the whole breadth of the afterlife in these instances. And Tim, you and I, we've both lost people to suicide. We've lost people to drug addiction. We've lost people to alcoholism and to murder and the whole swath of tragedy. So we're left with a lot of questions, right?
Yep.
What does this mean? And what is the concept of a lost soul or spirit? Do spirits really wander about not realizing they're dead? There's so much of this that we've touched on throughout time, but I don't know that I've ever still felt like we've had a fully rounded answer. And hopefully today we'll add a little bit more to that puzzle in this discussion. Siobhan Smith is our guest today, and her niche is really in helping people with friends and relatives who've crossed over via suicide, murder, overdoses, and of course, natural causes. She's a certified medium in the United States, but she lives in the UK with certified mediums, and we do have a link up for her website. She has thousands of followers on Facebook and Instagram. She is here to talk to us tonight and give us some of these insights. Thank you so much for joining us, Siobhan, and being a part of the show today.
Very much looking forward to talking to you both today, both to you, David, and to you, Tim. So it's going to be wonderful for us to go through and really get to the bottom of what actually does go on with spirits and how when they pass, what actually happens. So really looking forward to going through and talking with that about that with you today, with both of you. Was
this a skill that you were born with, or was this a skill that you really worked hard to try to develop and get a handle on?
Well, in all honesty, I was born this way, and it was something which really frightened me. I grew up in a haunted house in England. My whole family are actually Irish Catholic, and it goes back to my mum, my sister who's passed, my gran, and my great-granddad. He would see more spirits than the blades of grass. But and they were sort of Irish Catholic, so there was fear there. But my mum was more open, and because we were in this Victorian haunted house, my mum was actually more okay with it, so she didn't have that fear, but she still followed her religion. And it was us in that house that would see. And when I was 2 years old, it was my first encounter. My granddad got run over in Ireland that day, and mum came back into the kitchen and seen me talking to him, and we found out he got run over that day. So definitely for me, this is
wait a minute.
I was yes.
so your grandfather passes, and then
Yes.
he comes to you. Is he aware that he's crossed over? Is he there to say his goodbyes? What can you explain to us about that?
He was there to say his goodbyes, because the thing with us is, because obviously, although being raised with, I'm living in the UK, but my whole family are Irish Catholic, and I don't follow my religion. I respect people that do, but they obviously know that we were so open to the spirit world. So that's why Granddad came to me. I never met him in life, my dad's dad, but that day he got run over. And he came to see me and was talking to me. I was only 2, and mum came back into the kitchen and seen me talking to him, because my mum would see, we would all communicate. But for me, I was quite frightened of it, because my sister, growing up with her, she had child to adult leukemia, and I found it quite overwhelming. So it was definitely for me something I was born with, and it's come back from my ancestors. But losing my son to spirit and my sister, they were the ones that kept coming and forcing me to embrace my ability, which I'm so glad they did. So I have been communicating with spirit for over 40 years, professional for 12, but that is down to losing my son and my sister. They were the ones that sort of pushed me to go forward. And there is nothing to fear with spirit at all. It's just that we sort of have fear put into us, maybe from our sort of upbringing and from society. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. in dealing with these losses for yourself, when your grandfather came to see you after being run over, did he look healthy and happy and whole? Did he appear as he did when he lost his life? What can you tell us about that?
Well, I was 2 years old at the time. So obviously I had my mum tell me, because my mum sees spirit and she communicates, but she just doesn't work as a medium and she follows her religion. And I respect people that do, I don't.
Right.
But when he came to me, yes, my mum, we all see. So we're able to see them solid. So when spirit come, yes, they can come and they can show themselves as solid, so you can see them, and I see them solid. Sometimes they don't want to show themselves that way, though, I'll be honest. Sometimes they just want to communicate. So when you work with spirit, you can communicate with your thoughts, or they can talk to you in your head or outside of your head. Sometimes they can come and you see them solid, or sometimes you'll see them in your mind. It's a seeing, a hearing, a feeling, a sensing, a touching, a smelling, a knowing. I always say I'm not gifted, and I refuse to look at myself as gifted, because I know that we're all spirit and human body. We can all communicate with spirit. It's just the more open you are, the more that you're able to do it. Does that make sense?
It does to a degree, but let me ask you, from the skeptical side of this, how
Yes.
do we discern the line between that voice being grandpa or our perception of grandpa?
Absolutely.
And I ask that because, we even read a news story a few weeks ago how when Hillary Clinton was in the White House, she would speak out loud to the ghosts of former first ladies. Although she wasn't truly speaking to their spirit, she was speaking to the concept and construct of them of, what would you do? How should I get through this? And she would, gain guidance. And she admits she wasn't speaking to spirit. She was speaking theoretically and looking for strength in their abilities to deal with things. And how do we discern that voice that's our own voice as opposed to that of spirit itself, for those of us that aren't familiar?
So this is where it's like with spirit, they're so subtle. So when they are trying to come to you, don't feel like you've got to meditate for hours standing on your head, chanting Om and all of that lot. They can come to you when you're eating a donut. You could be sitting on the toilet drinking a cup of coffee, but it's allowing that thought that comes into your head. So
Wait a minute. Who sits on the toilet and drinks coffee? Although I guess that does cut out the middleman, doesn't it? It just streamlines that whole process.
Well, you could be drinking coffee and going for a wee, or you could be doing them separately. But definitely there's no sort of way that you have to sort of like, I have to go meditate for an hour or anything like that to talk to them. They can come to you at any point, and that's the thing. But when you're actually trying to understand about them communicating, it can be very subtle. That's why a lot of people miss it. So giving it to you as an example, you could be stood at the kitchen sink, bored, washing up a cup or doing your washing up, the old-fashioned way, and your mind wanders because it's boring. And then you get told in your head, or you hear something and it's telling you that your tooth is going to chip and you're going to have to go to the dentist, say next Thursday, and then they give you a date. So if you were to write that down and then you end up having this chipped tooth and it happened that following Thursday and you have to go to the dentist, then how did that happen? How was I just told this information and why do I know that? That's their way of sort of talking to you. Now, everybody's different. Some people are very visual. So spirit can come to you and they could come to you again, showing you images in your mind. So we could go back to the toilet, or we could be having a cup of coffee, whatever we're doing, or at the sink washing up, mind's wandering. And then you start seeing images like people, like you can see patterns in the floor or in, wallpaper, and you start seeing faces and things like that. This is spirit trying to reach you. When you get them thoughts in your head of things that are not what you're thinking of, so a random thought of something, or you're told some information and you're like, I wasn't thinking about that. So this is their way of trying to sort of get in and reach you, if that makes sense. And it's also like when you're half in and half out of sleep, they like to connect that way, not because they want to haunt you or frighten you, it's just you're less logical. So this is where you may hear your name being called. So you might hear Dave, or you might hear Tim. And it's very quick and you're half in, half out of sleep and you think it's your imagination, but it's just their way of reaching you. That is through verbal. So there's so many different ways. It's like a sensing or a smelling or a knowing. You get that feeling in your gut, and you're like, I can't go down this route because I know if I go down that route, I'm going to get delayed today. So you think, okay, I'll go different route. So if you're not listening to your gut, because that's them talking to you, we've all got that instinct. But over the years, because obviously we're not cavemen, cavewomen, and we don't rely so much on our instincts nowadays, and that's why it's kind of fallen away. But it's definitely something we all have, because we're all spirit and human body, so it makes sense that we can all communicate. And I always tell people, when you're wanting to try to do this yourself, when you're feeling or sensing like somebody's watching you, that's because spirit are there. That's them. So you're not imagining it is real. But I'm very cynical and I expect more from them. So when you get that feeling, what you can turn around and you can say, okay, then if this is you, say Uncle Jimmy or my brother Harry, whatever, you can say, I need to know that that's you. So you give me 3 signs today that I know is you. So I want your name, your age, your birth date. Show me them 3 signs today. That will help to validate that that was you in the room with me, making me feel like I was being watched. Can you see how then you're pushing your own communication yourself and doing it yourself? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Now, if I could rewind you for a second, talking about those voices, my wife has been, I hate to use the word tortured, but I can't think of another word that fits. She is tortured because, she lost her mother 4 years ago.
I'm so sorry.
And she will hear her mother's voice, but it's always kind of this, she feels like this angry yell of her name, like she's trying to get my wife's attention, but that's it. It's not like, get out, fire. It's nothing specific explaining what she's yelling about. It's just her calling out my wife's name. And my wife feels that there's some kind of anger behind it. She's also had that kind of sense with her father since he passed away a year ago today, as a matter of fact. And I was woken up about 2-3 weeks ago from a dead sleep. I heard my daughter yell for me, my living daughter. I heard her, Dad, just scream. And I got up out of bed, pulled on my pajama pants and shirt and went out to check. And they were all sound asleep. And she even had a friend spending the night. So had she screamed, I'm sure that would have woken her friend up. And there was nothing. So I'm just curious, if they're trying to reach us through that veil. And let me clarify for listeners, when Siobhan mentions, we're not in our logical mind, that's not a slammer saying that, we're open to craziness. It's the fact that in those moments, you're not overanalyzing the message. You're not overanalyzing the communication. You're more open and willing and accepting in that hypnagogic and hypnopompic state. But what do you make of these, like my wife hearing these voices calling for her, but no message to follow, or that scream, primal scream for my daughter, who's very much alive? I can't make sense of any of it.
So let me just explain. So what is happening there is that is her mother trying to reach her. So she's not angry. She's not warning her of anything. It's just that she's trying to project her voice out. And the reason why she's hearing it as a scream or sounding angry is because she's really using all of her energy to shout her name. And that's why it can come across angry or loud or like someone's yelling, because they're really trying to reach. But this is awesome for your wife because she's got the ability to hear. This is why I say majority of us have got a seeing, a hearing, a feeling, a sensing, a touching, a smelling, a knowing. And that's obviously her stronger sense, which is brilliant. So this is where she could work more on that now. Going back to your daughter, this can happen. This has happened to me. Like my children, they both see, but they're not really interested. So I just close them down, and I appreciate and understand that. But just to explain, we don't have to die to come out of our body. And I don't want to overwhelm you too much, but I just want to explain it a bit more. We don't have to die to come out of the body. All right. We were spirit. We come into the body. We go back to the spirit world as spirit. But when we're sleeping, a lot of us, we come out. When I come out of my body a lot, and I'm not gifted. There's nothing gifted about me. I'm just a normal human. And this is something we can all do. So it's often that I'm out. But again, this is something that we all do. That's why as well, without going off on a tangent, when you're having a visitation dream and it feels intense and real, it's because your spirit's out of the body and that spirit of your loved one is with you in the room. So you're on that astral plane together. But what's happened with your daughter, I feel with your daughter, she's very open to the spirit world. And this is actually her spirit that would have come out. And it's not because she's going to die, because that's not happening. It's just that we have got different abilities and people at just different levels. And again, this is where you've heard her. So when you were hearing her shouting, it wasn't actually her physically, it was her spirit. Because this has happened to me on numerous occasions where my daughter has also heard me. I've been asleep and then she's been, in her bedroom, and it's been at night, and she heard me clearly calling her name. And I was clearly asleep, but it was because I was out of my body. So this is where you need to work more with your daughter and help her to understand her abilities, because of the great work, fantastic work that you both do here, you, David and Tim, and then with your wife obviously being open. This goes back to your daughter as well. So I'd maybe start looking more into astral projection, astral traveling, and understanding about how you come out of the body. I can talk more about that to you as well, but I know obviously we're on a time frame here. But that's what's happening, okay? And that's why I would suggest to you, maybe for validation for your own purpose, which I always help with my clients, is get them to take you out of your body so that you can start getting that validation yourself. But get them to take you out and take you to a family or a friend's house and ask for it so that you're shown that person, but then have it so that, like, say that night they wake up, that person's house that you go to, and it's about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, and you see that they can't sleep and they're having a cup of coffee. I can't sleep tonight. And then ask them to show you the time so that you can see the actual time. So you can say to them the next morning, look, were you up last night? Were you up around 2, 3? Were you drinking a cup of coffee? Could you not sleep last night? And then they'll be like, well, you're weird. How did you know that? But it will help to validate that your spirit was out of your body and you were able to see things. Because I know that I come out and I know what I see and I get it validated. But this is where everybody can do this practice themselves to get their own validation. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Obviously something we need to work on. And I'll relay that information onto my wife so that she feels a little bit more comfortable, because again, I've been concerned. I don't know if it's, my wife being so torn up by hearing this and feeling like, is her mom mad at her? Is there something going on? But, it makes sense. She's just trying to break through that veil to be heard.
Break through that veil, because when you're half in and half out of sleep, we are less logical. And I don't mean to be disrespectful when I'm saying less logical. I'm just trying to say it in a word that people understand. Because we're half in and half out of sleep, it's like we don't think, because I'm actually, although I communicate with spirit, I'm very cynical and I expect a lot from them. So, and I think it's really good when people are skeptical or cynical, because I think it's really good to not just accept that everything is spirit, because it isn't. And I think when you go like that, you expect more from them and then they push for more. So this is why with her mother, that's why when next time that happens, you can turn around and say to your wife, when you hear that next time, you then turn around to your mother and you say, right, today, when I get up out of this bed, I want 3 signs I associate with you. But let your wife say to her mother, I want your name, your birthday, any 3 things, and make sure that she says it to her mother, because then her mum can show them signs throughout the day, 3 of them, and then that will help to validate that she wasn't crazy, that was real. And that's her, when she asks for them, that's her communicating to her mother. And then when her mother gives her them 3 signs that day, it's her communicating back. So already you've got a back and forth communication instead of paying lots of dollars to a medium when you can do it yourself. This is something I'm very passionate about. I help people, obviously it's the work that I do, but I'm always helping people to do it themselves, because I know that we can all do this. And this is something I'm going to continue helping with people until the day I pass over, because I want to help everybody understand that, yes, you are spirit and human body, and yes, you can do this yourself. So definitely with your wife, she can push on that now and get more validation. Does that make sense?
It does. May I ask a quick question before we start getting into the intricacies of death and what it all means? The concerns I know a lot of people have, right? Obviously, there's been a stigma about mediumship through history. It's in the Bible. People either read it or misconstrue the true meaning of allowing spirit to communicate, and necromancing, if you will. Allowing the spirit in to speak and speak through your head. So many people and people in the theological field and spiritual field have told us that can sometimes lead to attachments and possession, that these spirits or energies start off kind, sweet, and oh, just let me in, Siobhan, let me speak with you, and I can do it directly, into you, and you don't need a medium, you don't need this, and then you open that door and negativity can happen. What do you say regarding those kinds of fears and concerns?
So when I work with spirit, I would always tell people, whenever I'm helping them in a reading and explaining that they could do this themselves, it's really important you do protect. So it's massively important to protect yourself. So always I would call on that higher power, whatever resonates with you. Obviously, I was raised in religion. I don't follow that anymore, but I respect people that do. I respect every belief. So whatever higher power you associate with, and if you don't associate with the higher power, then you can just call on the higher power of your ancestors, but definitely calling on that higher protection. And then at the end of it as well, protecting and closing down. But it is really important that you do that, because obviously, like you say, you're opening a door and you don't want to just randomly talk to any spirit, because when you go down that pathway, then yes, you can. It's like opening your front door and saying, hi, stranger, just come in now today. This is why it's always important when you're doing it, don't be under the influence of drugs or alcohol, always be in control. And, obviously I grew up with spirit and I didn't know that as a child. And that's why I had so much fear. But the haunted house I lived in, that spirit was not a very nice person at all. It was horrible. But if I'd have known now, then I would have been able to deal with it. And, obviously not had his energy in the house. But this is why when I would always urge people, whenever they're going forward to talk to their loved ones, just quickly call on that power. I mean, I call on Archangel Michael just to oversee me, protect me, my family, and my home. But again, just call on that higher power, asking for that protection. And that's when you can, what do I sense? What do I feel? What do I smell? What do I know? Write it down. And then at the end, that's when you would say, Archangel Michael, please take that energy away that doesn't belong to me, my family, and my home, or that higher power, and asking them, because this is where you stay in control of it. Because as you say, obviously me being raised in Catholic religion, yes, you are taught don't go to mediums. Like the priest that buried my sister, he was saying to me, don't go to see a medium. And I'm like, well, how do I run away from myself? So it is about society and it is about fear. Like I said to you earlier, my whole family, it goes back on, and my great granddad would see more spirits than the blades of grass, but they had that fear. They kept that fear because they had the fear from their parents, so they didn't push it. Whereas my mum was more open, but there is no fear. And it's like when I do my readings, I work 6 days a week and I help people. And if I really was, connecting with this demon, why would my readings all be about love? They're always telling me things, all this validation. I can go back as far as the 1600s, or I go back to people,
right,
their parents.
Right, for you. I think what it comes into is that other people that, when you're saying, we can all do this. You have this ability. I think the thought is that, yeah, you've done this. And there are a lot of people, and you know this as well as I do, that there are a lot of people that now claim to be mediums and psychics that don't seem to be in a very light place. And are they really getting information from good sources? And is what's working through them, positive? Because I've seen some really strange actions from mediums and psychics that would lead you to believe otherwise. And I think people are afraid that if they open themselves, they might open themselves to something they cannot contain. And you say it's as simple as asking for guidance and asking for God, the archangels, whatever you believe in, to protect you.
It's definitely about having control, isn't it? This is what it's about. This is why you never do it. If you're having drugs or alcohol, you never, ever try or attempt ever to communicate with spirit. Don't do it. I always say, yes, we definitely can all do this. We're all spirit in a human body. I don't feel like, why should you have to go to a medium like me and pay, money to do this? No, you don't have to do that. But what I would say is it's really important that you understand and you have respect, because that's the reality. You can't just open the door and just start sitting there doing a tarot, doing Ouija or anything like that and saying, is anybody there? No, we take this very seriously and we do call on that protection. I've been communicating with spirit now, like I say, 40 years, professional for 12, but if I didn't have this protection, do the way I do it, and I keep it really simple, I'd have thousands of spirits in my house. And, I wouldn't be living the life that I'm living, and I would be hugely affected. So this is why I'm saying to people out there, yes, you can do this, but you've got to have respect, and you've got to understand that before you go to do it, you do call on that higher power and protection, because this isn't just about you. We're just the middleman, we're the messenger at the end of the day. So you call on that higher power to protect you. You then write down what do you see, hear, feel, sense, touch, smell, know, and then at the end you ask for that energy to go, because what you don't want is that energy then to be around. But obviously if you're just calling on family members and things like that, that's okay, but it's always important that you protect and you close down, because you don't want to leave that door open. Because if you don't close down afterwards, when you're going out and about and around other people, you're going to be picking up on other spirit energy, and around like the mall or anywhere you go, and you're picking up that energy from the other people, and then you could end up having that energy in you and around you that you don't want. So that's why you always take control of it. So you protect, you do it, you close down. You never be under the influence of drugs or alcohol, ever. It's not an entertainment of let's go and have a drink and let's go and do this connection. That's a no-no. And that is where it goes wrong. And that's what you're talking about when it can be where you're seeing mediums or people that are going weird, or all these different things. Because the problem is, when you're under the influence of the drugs or the alcohol, you're not in control of your whole body, your senses. So this is where then you can connect to that lower energy, and that's when it can go wrong. Does that make sense?
It does. That's an interesting insight to it. All right. How now, in your communication, obviously people come through from all ways of death, right? And from your grandfather being struck by a car and killed, to suicide, murder, so on. Do the spirits do spirits know, especially earthbound spirits, do they know that they're dead, or do you not communicate with earthbound spirits? Do you only communicate with those that have grasped the concept that they're gone?
Well, just to explain from how I work, obviously, I work a lot with people that have passed to suicide, overdose, murders, all different ways. And what I've learned with spirit over my time of communicating with them is that it doesn't matter how you go back to the spirit world. So regardless, whether it's murder, whether it's suicide, whether it's overdose, anything like that, I bring through every day, all the time, the kind of spirits, these beautiful spirits I'm working with that have gone back, unfortunately, tragically. But I just need to make this very clear to you right now. And I don't want to go over this too much and, sort of bamboozle people. But I just need to make this clear, because we don't just die and become spirit. We were spirit. We come into a body and then we go back to the spirit world. So we have lived many lifetimes. So before we come into the body, as crazy as it sounds, we have a pre-birth planning. We do choose our exit point. Now, I work a lot with people that have passed to suicide. And when I've worked with them, every time when I sit, because I sit for half an hour with spirit before I even speak to the people that I'm going to be reading, and we have a good chat, we chill out and we relax, they always explain to me that they chose that as their exit point. We do choose our exit point, okay? It's like this. Someone can have a bad car accident, the whole car smashes up. They get out of the car, don't even have a scratch on them. It wasn't their exit point. Whereas somebody could try to pass to suicide, they take an overdose, they wake up, they live. Whereas somebody else does it, they pass over, because that was their exit point. A lot of the time when I work with people, and I work a lot with grieving parents as well, because I am one, my son's in spirit, but when I work with them, they explain to me that they chose suicide because they wanted to help to save lives. That was part of why they came back. So they've came back, they've chosen suicide as a way of going back to the spirit world because they want to help other people and to save their lives. And so often when I'm doing readings with lots of different people, it always comes out that they've saved other people's lives. So it's like when I bring people through that passed to suicide, they've stopped another loved one that should have passed to suicide with what they did, but they didn't pass to suicide. And then in the reading, they were like, we didn't understand how that didn't happen. And that's because that loved one that did pass to suicide stopped them because it wasn't their exit point. So it's almost like, it's like me being raised in religion. People have this complete misconception, that they go to this, lower plane and that they're suffering over there. That is not the truth at all. When they pass over, they're met by their loved ones in love. There is no place for them to recover, because they don't need to recover, because in this earth plane, it's the lower vibration. So sometimes when you have people here that are very high vibration, they can struggle. So they'll do a coping as drugs or alcohol to numb out. And sometimes then this is where they'll have that depression, because their high vibration is so high. To be on this low vibration of earth, they'll struggle to be here. But when they've chosen that as an exit point, the suicide, they will then go back. But they're so selfless because they wanted to help others. So that is part of their soul contract, where they wanted to go through this, experience it, go back to the other side, and then stop other people that are trying or attempting to pass this way. But also on the flip side, they're helping other people that have then crossed over to suicide, and they want to help them understand, when they're met with their loved ones, we're all here together. This is how we've passed, but this is part of our soul contract. This is part of our soul plan. So it doesn't really matter how you pass, because that is our exit point. It's like when I work with people that have had abortion or miscarriage, I bring through a lot, and obviously that's a big controversial thing, and everyone's entitled to their own opinions. And this isn't about, an opinion here, but I do bring them through as well. And they are able to explain that is what they chose as their exit point as well. So we all choose our exit point before we come into the body. So whatever way we're going back is already pre-planned. Does that make sense?
Well, that's a double-edged question. I understand what you're saying. I think a lot of us have trouble believing we choose those parts of life to come back, to commit suicide, to because first of all, to me that just seems like something that isn't putting foresight into how it affects the people around us.
And that is another factor. And let me explain. And I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's fine.
I'm so sorry, bless your heart. And I need to make this clear, because this is the exact point what you're saying. When this happens, they're not affected because they're out of the body. So they're fine. There's no depression. There's no trauma, no suicidal thoughts. They're gone. They're out of the body. They could be with you whenever they want. So they're not depressed. Us, we're the ones left behind. We're the ones that are depressed. I always say to people, don't cry for them, cry for yourself. We're the ones stuck here. But this is where it's really important that you understand as well that we've got newer souls, we've got older souls. So where we live many lifetimes, so we do live and we go back. I know being raised Catholic, we're not meant to believe, blah, blah, blah. We do live many lifetimes, and people can have their own belief or understanding. But this is where it's about the soul. So some people are newer souls, some people are older souls. You tend to find the older the soul, the more they come back here and go through. So it's almost like an older soul of tick every box of lots of bad things that, that they go through, because their soul has been here before. It's almost like they've been here, done that, got the T-shirt, they've had the family, they've had the car, they've had the house. They don't care about the material things. So the people that are left here, they're part of that. I always tend to find when I'm working with people a lot that have passed to suicides, their family are older souls, and so are they. And they have chosen this, but is this an agreement, as crazy as it sounds? Because what happens when we go through this, like you, like me, because we've gone through these kind of things, it makes us reach out for more. What is going on? If I hadn't have gone through all my losses and all this trauma and everything else, I wouldn't be talking to you now. I wouldn't have bothered being a medium, because now I'm actually a designer. I'm an artist, and I didn't want to talk to people that have passed over because I was frightened of it growing up. But because of going through all that trauma, it pushed me for more. I need to understand this. I need to know more, because our soul has been here many times. So we've had that easier life. We've been more bothered about the material things. Now we're not as bothered, because this is about us searching. So when we talk about the people left behind, these people, they're older souls as well, the people that have lost their loved ones to suicide. And this is where it's your opportunity as a soul to push forward, like the great work that you both do, you, David and Tim. You're getting this out to the world. You're helping people to understand, to look beyond this car or this house. Us older souls are here to teach, and this is about why, when this happens, by losing somebody that way, and not just a natural grief, it pushes us to sort of question our own journey. And this is where we can push our own soul on our own sort of soul growth and our own our journey here. Does that make sense? Does that help to understand a bit more of what I'm trying to say?
Right. And I understand the things you're saying, that the words and concepts. I have a hard time, as I know many people have, because we've heard about it through the 15 years of doing the show. It's hard to believe that we choose tragedy, that we make these soul contracts for tragedy. I'm not denying that it's real. It's just so hard to believe. But I guess if you want to evolve, you want to grow, it's better than leaving it to the shake of cosmic dice, that when you land, you're like, boom, all right, cancer, child abuse, and smoking. That seems even worse to me, that it's just these random throws of the dice. I guess it gives us a little bit more of a sense of empowerment to know that we've chosen these aspects when we come into life, and to know what it's like to deal with these things.
Absolutely. And can I explain? Because, if you come here and you've got the easy childhood, you've got the easy adult life, you meet the love of your life, everything's perfect, everything's wonderful. We all work, we get a car, we swim in the pool, and we just have this blissful life. We just go through life just being happy, just doing our life. But we're not growing. What are we learning? I know it sounds crazy, and believe me, I've been so frustrated with spirit over the years. Don't think I just sit here standing on my head chanting Om, and I'm just like sitting here drinking water and I'm all like, this whatever. That's not what I'm about. I'm very real. I'm very black and white under how I speak, as you can see as I'm talking to you. But I think it's really important to understand that we as souls, we keep coming back here. The older the soul, yes, it is harder, but I wouldn't have pushed forward with my mediumship and helping all these people. So when I come through with these validations and specific validation, helping them to know that, look, their loved one is not gone. They are really here. And I give so much evidence that they know that I'm real. And again, this isn't a gift. This is something that we can all do. But you wouldn't be doing this great work that you're doing today and getting out to the world and teaching others had you not gone through your own trauma. There is no way that you would be doing this, you and Tim, this fantastic work that you do, reaching people, teaching people through the fantastic work that you do, if you had not gone through trauma. If you were not an older soul, you are an older soul. If your life was all blissful and you had all this money, you'd just be sitting there having a drink, swimming in the pool, and you wouldn't even care about anything. Does that make sense?
Can we talk about that for a little bit more? Tim and I floating by the poolside, money just dripping off the trees, no children back talking to me, and
yes. Absolutely. Wow. Wouldn't it be amazing? But what would we learn?
What I'd learn? How to relax and not have to worry about everything else. I'm willing to take that chance. Tim, we're signing that soul contract next time we come back. We want to
I'm with you. Absolutely. When we come back, we're having the swimming pool. We're having all of that stress-free life. But you can understand where I'm coming from, because had we not gone through all these different traumas, we would not be having this conversation now.
I get it. I understand that. No, I do. I'm enjoying the fantasy for a moment.
Oh, I'm completely.
What would life like to be?
I'm already in the pool. I'm not actually, but I wish I was. I don't have one. But yeah, absolutely. I completely understand where you're coming from. But that is how it is, isn't it? And
right.
I mean, obviously I've had to try and learn and understand myself with spirit over the years, but it makes sense to me. So I hope it kind of makes sense to you, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Now let's talk about the suicide. People, again, the religious and theological dogma of suicide is that the soul is tortured and sent to hell for these choices. Obviously, people that make that choice are not healthy. They're not in a mental healthy state. So to me, it seems, I just have a hard time that a loving, caring God would punish somebody that's sick and made a decision out of illness. But how do we wrap our head around suicide and what that means for the afterlife?
So let me explain, because I'm completely with you. Obviously, I know how been raised in that religion and everything else, but from communicating for over 40 years and hearing it directly from them, it doesn't matter how we pass back to spirit. Let me explain. If you have a heart attack because you've eaten and eaten and eaten, and obviously you've put the weight gain on, then you affect your heart, so you have a heart attack. Doesn't make you a better person than someone that has an issue with the brain that then passes to suicide. Likewise, if someone smokes and they end up affecting their lungs, they pass that way. Doesn't mean that they have a good afterlife. And then the person that has an issue with the brain passes back and has to suffer over there. This is why I always trying to explain whether you have an issue with the heart, the lungs, the brain is an organ that's unseen. So why would somebody suffer here having an issue with the brain that is still not known about because there's still so much work to be done on it? They would not suffer here and then go over there and suffer. That doesn't happen, because we can have a heart attack, we can have lung cancer, we can pass any way to do with an organ. So why is the brain any different? It's another organ in the body. When you suffer here, though, the more and more I work with spirits, because I work so much with people that have passed suicide, I always tend to find they're very sensitive. They're very open to the spirit world, may not have realised it. They're a very high vibration. Now, when we talk about the earth plane, very low vibration here. So sometimes when we have that vibration of energy, and this often happens with the suicide, people that pass to suicide, is their vibration is so high that the reason why they have this depression or needing to cope with the drugs or the alcohol to numb themselves is because there's such a high vibration. Because when we talk about spirit, they are on a higher vibration. They vibrate at a higher speed. That's why you see them and then you don't see them. It's why it's like speeded up. So when you have that beautiful higher vibration and they come here, they're going to struggle because it's a lower vibration. So this is why sometimes people will turn to the drugs or they turn to the alcohol to cope, to numb out. Okay. So, but this is where, when they do pass over that way, they come through to me. They're not depressed. They're not healing on the other side. None of that, because, we could turn around and say, okay, the person that ate loads of food, they had a heart attack. So then they pass over. So do they have to be punished? Or the person that had loads of alcohol, that has cirrhosis of the liver, so they damage their liver, do they have to be punished? Not at all. And that is why I always explain to people, regardless of how you pass over, your loved ones do meet you. But let's get to the point here. Now, I want to explain this because this will help you to understand a bit more. I do not work with dark energy, but I will allow paedophiles, and I just need to make this clear, the only way they come through are begging on their knees, and they get through my army because they have remorse. The reason why I'm bringing this up is just to help you understand. So if I have a paedophile that comes through, it's for the healing of my client. I have been molested. I have been violently raped. So this is something I'm very passionate about, and I don't like them and I don't like their energy. But if they get through my army in spirit, it's because they have remorse. So I will be able to do a healing. I'm not just about validation. I'm also about healing to do with molesting or rapes and things like that. I will pass on that apology. Whether my client chooses to forgive them is none of my business, but it's important for them to get that apology, for them to be validated, because so many people be abused and they're not validated because nobody hears them. But let me explain this as well. So when the paedophiles come through, they're often on their knees begging me, please, can you get them to forgive me? Because what happens when we pass over, it's not a heaven and hell as such as what we were led to sort of believe in the religion, which I was raised up in. But when we pass over, we go to that heaven-like state or hell-like state of consciousness because of our behavior. So that is why when I bring through, only if they have remorse, to say sorry, they will have a hell-like state of consciousness, because what's happening is they get to see it and feel it through their victim's eyes. So their afterlife is seeing and feeling everything through their victim's eyes. So they're the ones that suffer. But when we talk about people that pass to suicide, why would they suffer? They suffered in this life. They didn't choose to ask to have an issue with the brain. Nobody asked to have an issue with the brain or the heart or the lungs or the liver. It's an organ. So this is why I need to make that so clear, that it isn't a case of them passing over, them going to this plane where they've got to, suffer more, get this healing. That's rubbish. They are met with their loved ones. They are out of that body, free of trauma. Their beautiful high vibration is back in that beautiful high vibration of where their energy just, excels. But when we talk about the horrible, darker, lower energy of the paedophiles, they're the people that suffer on the other side because they get to see it and feel it. So the karma that hasn't happened to them here or been exposed, they have to deal with it on the other side. And this isn't a belief. I know it because I can see them. But then once they've said sorry, I tell them to leave because I don't want to talk to them, because I don't work with darker energy. But for them to come through and have that remorse means that they are working on that, wanting to, reach out and apologize. And so many people that I work with get healed this way, because that's important. And I want that, I want this to happen to me because I haven't had that.
Let me ask now, again, once we're crossed over, there's, we're in a different place, soul, mind, and body. But you say you don't let these darker or lower energies in, but aren't we all the same energy once we've died? Because again, this person came here, made a soul decision to be a pedophile, to learn and educate themselves and maybe affect and influence people who came in choosing to be afflicted and affected by that, is by putting up a wall. Do you know what I'm saying with that? I mean, it seems to kind of fly in the face of
I understand.
Yeah,
and I think this is where it comes back down to free will, because the reality is, we're not meant to be paedophiles. It's not okay. That's the issue. To abuse a child. I've been molested. I've been violently raped. That is violation, and it affects you. It does affect your life, regardless of what anybody says. It will affect your whole life.
So you don't believe that you signed a pre-contract to live through those situations?
To be a paedophile? No.
No.
Oh, me?
Right. To have lived through the attacks, the abuse, the rape.
I think what's happened with me when I go through this, and I go through all these traumas, because I've had trauma since a child, trauma, and it's just been trauma after trauma after trauma. I get that and I understand it, because there's no point in me sitting here being a medium saying, oh my God, I really understand and I empathize if I haven't gone through it. But I do believe that I've signed up and gone through all these different things. But I also feel as well, and what I've learned and what I've understood with the paedophile energy, is that they do come here and they are on a lower vibration. They are lower vibrating souls. I know that they're more evil. They're more on a lower vibration. I know when I talk to older souls, they're on a higher vibration, like when people pass to suicide. More often than not, when they come through, they're so high vibrating. When I talk to the paedophile, they're on a much lower, darker, sort of lower vibration. So these kind of energies, so yes, you have got that different kind of energy. They always go on about heaven and hell, but there is that different. We're not all the same.
But,
it's like
But let me hold on one second, though. This is the point, right? This is where I think people get confused, and I'm even struggling with it in your description. You agreed that you signed on to take these traumas.
Yes.
Then there is the sympathy for the devil. Without there being the dark side to create those choices that you've chosen to live through and the traumas that you've gone through to elevate you, escalate you, and bring you to the level you're at now to help others, you need the villain. You need the bad guy. Somebody has to sign on to be the bad guy.
And
so I understand your aspect of free will, but in this instance, it seems like the tail's wagging the dog, right? I mean, we can't say that, we choose these lives, we choose these traumas so that we can escalate and elevate, but then demonize. And understand, I'm not standing up for pedophiles, murderers, rapists, anything like that. But
absolutely.
It's like,
I totally agree with what you're saying, because I think what's happening here is this is about us evolving. This is about us. And let me just explain from what I've learned with spirit, because I'm, again, only a human listening to spirits. So, but what I've understood over the years is this is where we need to start more evolving as spirits. So this is where we keep coming back. We do keep coming back. We've got to keep coming back. We all keep coming back. But obviously you've got the newer souls, the older souls. We need to not be having this kind of abuse on here in the spirit world. Obviously what happens is you think it and it happens. It is a better place. I'm not saying that we all sprout wings and it's just we all become angels. It's not like that either. But the reality is, we on earth, this is what I would call hell. So this is where all the bad things can happen, so the good and the bad. But this is where these souls, all of us souls, this needs to stop. So this is where we need to evolve to that point where we're not allowing that child abuse or that darker energy to allow them humans to do these things. So therefore, yes, I did sign up to all the trauma I've gone through, but also when you're dealing with that horrible, more darker energy, when I'm talking about energy like them, this isn't like, you or Tim, this isn't about you as that darker energy. That's a lower energy. They've chosen to come and do this. Yes, they have. And then I've gone through that. But this is where we need to change and evolve as souls. And that's why people keep coming back, because we need to have it so where everybody's on this earth plane, where we're not doing that darker, it's like all this hate, isn't it? Like when we have brilliant people like Martin Luther King and all of that. I mean, if we go to that area as well, we shouldn't be having racism or, a judgment or anything like that, because the reality is we've all lived many lifetimes. We've all been male, female. We've all been black, white. We've all lived in different countries. We're actually all one. We're all spirit. There is no difference. Once we pass over, we're going to look back on our lifetimes and we're going to see we're male, female. We were black. We were white. We lived in different countries. The quicker we on this earth plane understand that we're all spirit in a human body, we are all one. Just because you're in America and I'm here in the UK and my whole family is from Ireland, I don't associate with a country, because as far as I'm concerned, I'm spirit in a human body, and I'm not English, or my family are not Irish. I have to say it because humans understand it. But the quicker we understand that we are here, we need to do good and stop doing these bad things that people are doing. Once we get that sort of what's happening in the spirit world, that sort of better energy on this earth plane, then this is when we get a better earth plane. And it's like us opening up to the spirit world. If everybody could communicate with spirit, then I think we'd have a better world. I hope I'm trying to explain this, and I don't know if I am. Is that helping you understand a bit more?
No, because it again flies in the contradiction of what we do when we sign on for contracts. Obviously, we want to.
This is what I'm saying.
Hold on,
sorry.
let me finish a full thought. When no problem. But when we sign on to a life, and we have to learn, there has to be hiccups in order for us to learn. I know we're all trying to elevate and escalate to get to a point where we can have this unified theory, but and the darkness will fade. But that's the balance, the light and the dark, the good and the bad, the yin and the yang. There's opposite sides. So do you see that we'll ever be able to escalate to that kumbaya?
I think so. I do, because, and the reason why I say it is I have gone through, obviously with all my trauma, I've had a lot of darkness in my life. So I have been there and I've had to drag myself off the floor, many times, and I've had to do it alone. And it's been a real sort of soul searching alone time. And I've had to do that. And I do agree with you 100%. It isn't about kumbaya. It's like when I work with spirit, I'm not sitting here standing on my head chanting om, drinking water, farting rainbows and all of that lot. I'm not sitting here like that. I'm very real, and that's what I'm about when I speak. And that's why when I work with spirit, I say exactly what they tell me. I don't hold anything back because I trust in them. And it is about the light. It is about the dark. But we need to get to a point, which we will do. I believe one day in the future, I believe that we will get the fact where everybody will be here. They will remember who they are, that we are all spirit in a human body, and that this darkness of that lower energy, I believe, will become less. I believe in it and I trust in it. I have to, because I've gone through so much trauma that I need to believe that the humans in the future, I believe we will evolve to that point where it will become better. But we've got to have that going on at the minute. We do come back. We do go through all this trauma because this is how we learn, but this is how we teach. And that's what you're here to do. I'm here as a teacher. You're both here as a teacher. And while we're teaching others, while we're not just sitting in the swimming pool having a drink or relaxing, we are here. We're questioning everything. That's why we're having this conversation today. And I found them now, we're uniting on the internet. More of us are reaching everywhere. So you're not just sat in your bedroom or sat in your house not able to communicate. We communicate with the whole world. So I feel, everyone goes on about all the doom and gloom, but the reality is we're all coming together, and there's more of us out there that are questioning all of this, that are working with the spirit world, that are making these changes. So I do feel hopeful. I have to feel hopeful. And I feel that, like, when I bring these paedophiles through and that they're apologizing, they do have this remorse. And yes, they were part of this, and we have to go through the light and the dark. But I believe that one day I believe that paedophilia will stop. I do believe that racism will stop. And I do feel that one day we're going to be united. And that's all I can wish for and I can hope for. And I haven't had the best life at all, but I have to try and understand and learn from spirit that one day we will get here. And I think with us uniting with each other all over the world.
Isn't that when there's old souls, new souls, and medium souls, that we're all going to catch up at the same time seems like 20 billion years from now, because if there are new souls being generated, they have many lifetimes to live through many different
another thing,
right?
That is another thing as well. But then when you look at it this way, from what I've learned with spirit, and again, this is my understanding from spirit, say for instance, you're an old soul, you've got all this wisdom behind you and all this knowledge. So you're encountering newer souls, so you can teach them and that you can help them understand and listen so that they don't have to come back as many lifetimes. So if they encounter somebody like you and you can teach them to look more and not just be so focused on, just this earth plane, then maybe they won't have to come back as many lifetimes. I believe with us people out here now that are teaching, talking, more of us are connecting more with spirit, with more, questioning things. It's almost like us older souls, we can escalate their sort of soul journey so they don't have to come back. It's like when I'm working with people and I'm helping them and trying to get them to connect and do their own connection with spirit, when they have them newer souls around them, I'm always saying, like my sister would always say years ago, be a dripping tap. Or, just feed them, try and feed them in little baby steps. So I believe as souls, we are evolving, and there's so much badness out there that I do believe that we, as time goes on, I feel that there is hope for us to generate into a better earth plane, because I do see the earth plane as a lower vibration. I don't believe in heaven and hell as such. I believe that this is hell, and I believe that we've come back here and we go through all of this that's going on here. And that's why when people pass to suicide, it's because they struggle to cope here because of the lower vibration. But I do believe that one day, and many, many light years, I don't know how many years it's going to be, who knows? Nobody's got that answer. But I have faith and I trust, and I believe that if we can keep teaching and helping others and reaching more people, reaching these newer souls, then I believe then we could become more united quicker than we realize. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. We need to take a break. We'll be back. We've got more to discuss. Siobhan Smith, our guest, right here on Darkness Radio. Welcome back to the program. This is the best in paranormal podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Dave Schrader, along with me, Tim Dennis. Hey, guys, there is no live show this week. I am out at the Minnesota Paracon, the Para-Unity Con. I would love for you guys to join us. If you haven't already bought your tickets, you can find them. Just go to darknessevents.com. Darknessevents.com. Click on the link for the program or location I'm going to be at. You'll find more information about them and how to get your tickets. I'm going to be out there all weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, coming back on Sunday, and I hope many of you will come on out and have some fun with us. There's a great lineup of speakers, a lot of fun stuff going on this weekend, and we'll be out there giving out free hugs. So make sure you stop by the Darkness Radio Holzer Files booth and come say hi to me. There's some other great events coming up as well throughout the year. You can find all the information on our site, darknessevents.com. If you want an overview of everything you can find out about us, check out darknessradio.com. Once you're there, you'll be able to find tabs on our shop, on our events, on each one of us, Dave and Tim, Holzer Files, and other projects that are going on. So make sure that you go check it out, darknessradio.com. And I want to point out to you guys, listen, here's something cool for many of you that you may not know. You're getting to listen to the show. It's absolutely free. You've got your commercials. Many of you are like, oh, we love the show, but commercials. Did you know that you can subscribe and listen through Stitcher Premium? I think it's like $5 a month, Tim. Is that $5 to $7 a month, something like that, right?
It's $5 a month. However, I'll give you a little secret, Dave, if you're ready for
what's
this.
That?
I believe the code is still active. If you go to stitcherpremium.com/darkness and put in the code, all one word, Darkness Radio, I believe you can still get it for $15 for the year.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
$15 for the year. Now, but Dave, I don't want to pay $15 for the year for just your show. You're not. That's the beauty of it. When you go to Stitcher and get the Stitcher Premium and use Darkness Radio, all one word, you get all of Stitcher Premium content. That gets you our True Crime Tuesday program, commercial free, all of Darkness Radio commercial free, and every other show Stitcher Premium has commercial free. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands of free hours of programming, commercial free rather, hours of programming. So go check it out for yourself, subscribe and be a part of the team with us. And then you don't have to listen to the advertising anymore. So I'm just putting that out there. If you want to do that, we love our advertisers. We love the support for them. But there are ways, and you keep reaching out to us about, oh, love the show. I'm so tired of all the commercials. Here, we're going to give you an opportunity, $5 a month. We'll get you that, or for using Darkness Radio code at checkout, it'll get you, I don't know if it's $15 a month or what it is, but or $15 a year, but it's definitely a much more compressed, inexpensive version of the program, and that gets you access to every program that they have commercial free. So
I know this much, Dave. If the Darkness Radio code doesn't work anymore, it is $5 a month, but you can get the first month free. So there you go.
That's good too.
Yeah.
See, plenty of cool stuff. So make sure you go check that out. And like I said, it gives you access to True Crime Tuesday, our other program, with all of our free content, or free commercial free content as well that way. All right, let's get back to it. Siobhan Smith, our guest today, as we're discussing communication with the other side. Siobhan, we've talked about the suicide. So just to allay people's fears, when death occurs, when the suicide takes place, of course, we're all left behind devastated, dealing with our own version of hell and loss and grieving for these people. But they're not going through torment. They're going through a learning and healing process, but they're not going through the hell torment that people have believed for years, correct?
Absolutely. And I work a lot with people, as I said, that pass to suicide, and they always come through happy. They're out of that body. They're always, usually, as I say, just to recap, they are usually a higher vibration. They just struggle to be on the earth plane because it's a lower vibration. And that's why sometimes they may do a coping as a numbing out, drugs, alcohol, things like that. And that is just their way of coping. And again, it's just to do with the brain. It's an organ, because there's that imbalance there. I, years ago, did have very bad depression. I've gone through these things myself. So I've suffered firsthand. So I understand it on so much of a bigger level as well. But when they come out of that body, there is no trauma. So because they're on that higher vibration, you know, where their energy is more connected, if that makes sense. It's just that vibration energy here is very low. So they're back on that higher vibration. So when they come out, there is no getting over it. There's no healing, because they've exited that body, you know, and so they're absolutely fine. It's the living. That's why I always say, don't cry for them gone, cry for yourself, because you're the one stuck here. We're the ones suffering, but they're very much out of the body. Regardless of what way you pass, we are met with our loved ones, and we are met in love, if that makes sense.
Great. Now, what about earthbound spirits? Are these spirits that are lost? Are they spirits that are unsure that they've passed over? What all is involved in that aspect? Well,
I grew up in haunted house, so I just want to relate it to that, because where we grew up in this haunted house in England, Victorian, very old house, he was a very angry man, and he wanted us out of that house. So this is where you would sort of class it as like an earthbound spirit, but it's because he was attached to the house, because he wanted us out of that house, because he still felt that that house that we were in was his. So that was his issue. So this is why when I was growing up, it was very frightening. Because where my sister, my mum and me, we would be open to the spirit. Mum and my sister were more open to it and loved it. We were all open, but I was frightened of it. But he would do like 4 o'clock in the morning, he would come and bash like with a hammer sounding on our bedroom wall, where me and my sister would sleep in the middle bedroom. On the outside of our wall was the hallway, the landing. So it wasn't like the neighbours or anything. It was so frightening. My dad wouldn't even get out of the bed. And he would hit the wall so loud, because he wanted us gone. And my sister, back in the early 80s, had that child to adult leukemia, which was misunderstood back then. I remember one night, her wanting to be sick, our bedroom door would always open easily, no problem. This particular night she wanted to vomit, and the door wouldn't open. My dad was trying to kick the door in, trying to kick it in with his foot and everything. Nothing was working. And then the door just flew open on its own, because this man, this spirit, because my mum, we'd obviously hear, we'd see and things like that. And my mum likes cleaning, so she was up till the early hours and was cleaning. And this one particular night, she remembers seeing him at the top of the stairs, and instead of like normal people be wanting to run out of the house, she was like, how am I going to get round you and get to my bedroom? So she wasn't really caring about it at all. But for me as a kid, I hated it. And I remember when my brothers came along, we moved into the back bedroom, which was always empty. And that's when he got really angry, because I'm 11 years older than my twin brothers, and my sister was 16 years older. So when we moved into this back bedroom in that house, oh my God, that made him go mad, really mad, that spirit. Because every night, me and my sister, when we were trying to sleep, we'd hear this wailing sound, and it just didn't sound like anything you could even imagine that's, earthly. It just didn't sound of this world. But every time we'd scream for my parents to come, they would come and it would stop. And this just kept going on and on and on. And every time they'd leave us and go back along that long landing to their bedroom, it would start again. And my sister was never scared of spirit, but that was enough for her. So we ended up having to sleep downstairs until we left that house, because he was so angry with us being in his house. So when we talk about earthbound spirits, it's more of them. He was obviously so attached to that house. He was like, how dare you be in my house? But whereas now, if I could go back, I would have asked him to go and explain to him, this is our house. You need to, move on and do what you're doing and stop being attached to this house, because you are dead. You need to realize, you need to understand, and you need to leave us now, because we own this house. But he just wasn't accepting it. But we know that back then, because that was in the 70s and the 80s, So does that help to answer your question?
Right. That gives me a better grasp on it. Now, when you communicate with spirits that have crossed over, that aren't angry, and well, how do I want to rephrase this? The ones that are left behind, is that the full spirit, or is that just a fragment, an element of what was left behind of our spirit? The old man spirit that was tormenting your house, was that truly all of who he was, or had part of him transferred over and this was just a sliver left behind, the base instinct?
Residual, isn't it? It's like a residual energy. It's almost like he's not accepting. He was past, but he wasn't accepting. So he was like more here. That's the thing. It's like, I always explain this. Let me explain this. It might be a bit more clearer, bless you. When our loved ones pass, they're not like floating on a cloud, playing the harp and all that lot. They live within our world, we just can't always see them. So they're right there with us, not in our private time, because that would just be weird, but they live within our world. They're just on a higher vibration, so speeded up. That's why you don't see them, but they live within our world. So he is in our world. We could see him because we were all mediums, even though I didn't want to be when I was young and I hated it. But that is why we could see him and we could feel him and sense him and pick up on what he was doing more. And because he knew it as well, and he was trying to get this message across to us, but he was more wanting to be more connected back to this earth. It's almost like he didn't want to be dead. I want my house back. He obviously knew he was past, but he wanted to be back here. He had such a strong connection and attachment to the earth that it was almost like he didn't want to accept it. And that's why we were having the problems. So he lived within our world, but instead of him being happy and just accepting the fact that, he's passed over, let's work this through, he just wanted to keep coming back to that house because he had such a strong attachment to that house. And again, it could be because he worked hard and he got that house and he was proud of himself, or any other reason. But sometimes spirits will be more sort of more connected to the earth plane for whatever reason. It may be also because he, like the things that people could do on earth, like drinking or whatever, all these other different things. And, he maybe just didn't want to be dead, if that makes sense. And that's why he kept making that point, and trying to force us out of what he perceived as his house, but it was our house, And also, this is another point, and I'm glad that we're talking about this, because my mum always remembers the people that sold her the house. They were very weird in the sense that she was sensing that they had done some sort of rituals in that house as well. It was just the way that they were wording things and saying things. Like it was almost like they could have been doing some sort of demonic sort of like trying, like when we work with talking about connecting with spirit. I could sit here and I could call on lower energy. I don't want to. So that's why I say I work in love and light only. I work with higher energy. So, but when people go and they start wanting to connect to that sort of lower energy, these people were doing that in that house because the way they were wording things to my mum that had sold it to my mum, and my mum was always seeing how frightened they looked in their face. And I believe that because of what they did in that house beforehand, it also helped him to come back into that house. Does that make sense?
Yes. Like it called him or drew him back.
House was just evil. It was just evil. It was awful. But again, this is why I say to people, don't be scared to do your own connections, but don't be doing it under the influence. Don't be doing drugs or alcohol when you're connecting. Do the protection and then close down, because there is nothing to fear with spirit, but you've got to be in control. You cannot allow them to take over you, because they don't and they won't, but you have to be in control. It's like when I was first working with spirit, they'd come and wake me up and I'd had enough, and I was like, I'm not putting up with this. I'm in control of this, and you're going to come when I say, because I'm not putting up with it. And that is why when I allocate and do my work, I have a structure. So when I'm working, I work at 100%, and I'm not just having them come to me willy-nilly, because at the end of the day, it's not okay. I'm a human and I need to sleep. So this is why I would always encourage people, don't be afraid either. Know that you're always in control. And as long as you're not under the influence and you're protecting, you're closing down, then you're absolutely fine, and work with that energy. But again, don't be calling on the darker energy, because if you're going to go down that route, then you're opening a door, if that makes sense.
Yes. When you're communicating with these souls that have lost their life traumatically through accidents or murder, do they ever give specifics to you, like who the killer was or what happened to help these crimes? Because it seems most of them don't really reveal that information. And I know a lot of people are confused and curious as to why.
Yeah, I work with people. I've worked a lot with people that have passed over to do with being murdered. And I've worked in different ways, helping people. And I've had it where the spirits have come through and they've told me, who killed them. And then they're able to come back and validate this or whatever. But yeah, absolutely. And again, this is also another part of it as well, isn't it? Again, that was their exit point. And as crazy as that sounds, and I hate saying it because I don't want to say it, but I know and I've understood it and learned with spirit that would have been how they've chosen to pass. But when they do go back over that way, again, when I bring them through, they're out of that body. There is no trauma. It's like a girl I had worked with, and she was murdered and her body, was severed. But she came to me solid, perfect, beautiful, out of that body, no trauma. Whatever happened to her physical, she tried to explain, that's not me, my essence, my true soul, myself. She looked perfect. She was beautiful and gorgeous, beautiful soul. And wanted to relay that to her family. But yes, they can pass on information to help. But the big problem that you've got as well is when you work with police or that sort of area, it's like, how much of it do they want to take from you? Because there's a lot of time over the years as well, I've learned and understood, especially in America as well, where you've had great mediums over there that have done work with the police department. They're very reluctant to say that they've got the information from a medium because they want it to be more sort of based on facts. So here is the gun. Here are the fingerprints. It's like one lady I was working with years ago, the police had implied to her that her son had passed to suicide. And I had said to her, no, this is all, completely covered up. This is corruption here. But this was corruption as well within the police, because I work a lot with the corruption in the police. I'm not saying they're all corrupt, because they're not. There's, very good people out there, but there is the odd bad apple. But I had explained to her that the gun that had shot her son, because they tried to claim that he shot himself and he passed to suicide, and he didn't. And I said, you need to go back to get the fingerprints, because the fingerprints on the gun won't be your son. And she was able to go back, and she was able to push on that and let them know. that the fingerprints, which they were not. So it's pretty obvious that he was murdered. But the big problem that you've got is when we're covering up things, which, I've had it where I've worked with people and they've corrupted the autopsy report, they've lied, or there's lies within the police. There can be so much corruption and lies between humans as well. So this is also sometimes a big part of the work that I do. So this is where I work a lot with spirit to expose, if that makes sense, and to try and help get justice. If you can't get justice through the humans because there's corruption and lies, then we have to also then work with spirit to try and expose it in some other way. But also the other factor here, another point, like when I spoke about the paedophiles, when people do pass over and they do the murder, they're able to get to see it and feel it through their victim's eyes. So whatever happens here, if they go to prison and if they don't, whatever happens when they pass over, it's going to be much worse, because going to prison here or jail is going to be it's going to be like heaven, because when they get to pass over, that's when they get to see it and feel it through the victim's eyes, through the family's eyes, all of that hurt. So that's where the karma comes. So ultimately, they will have to deal with this and they will get this back to them. Does that make sense as well?
Yes. Yeah, it certainly does. Are you ever, now that you've gone through what you've gone through, both in life and dealing with the other side, are you ever frightened by the other side? Is there still aspects of the supernatural and ghosts, spirits, demons, dark forces, whatever, that affect and frighten you?
No, because I know that I'm protected. I've got my brilliant army in spirit. Although my 2 grands were like 4 foot something in life, they were quite small, very fiery, feisty women. I've got a massive army of protection. And I know that as long as I stay strong and I stay, in the sense of me, not allowing that. This is what it's about, isn't it? It's like in life, don't allow people to push you around. You've got to stand up for yourself. You've got to have that voice. And I know that's not always possible, but with spirit, when you go to work with them, don't have that fear. Don't allow them, to make you feel that fear, because once you take control and you say, no, this is not happening, then this is where, because we're always in control over spirit, because we are human. We're in this body at the end of the day. So that's our advantage. So definitely not. I don't have that fear like I did. But when I had that fear when I was a child, that is because I was so sensitive to the spirit world. I didn't realize how sensitive and how much I was so open to all of it. And I think that's why I was so overwhelmed. And it was just frightening. My dad was a violent alcoholic as well. My sister had the child to adult leukemia. And, they didn't know about it in the early 80s. So she was taken away from me a lot. And then I was bullied because of her. They didn't understand the leukemia back then. So it was not just dealing with these spirits. It was dealing with other things as well. So it was very frightening. But I think as well, that's where it's helped me to have that sort of like feisty nature of, I was frightened. I had that fear. And I'm not going to let anybody frighten me. So I would say to everybody out there, don't be frightened. Just know that you're always in control. But don't do it under drugs or alcohol, because once you start doing that, then you're out of control. And that's when you can allow lower energy in. And that's where things can go wrong. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. What message do you want to leave our listeners with that are interested in communicating with the dead, with their loved ones, or even just reaching through the veil to try to communicate with anyone on the other side? Is that something that you think everybody should try? Or
yeah, I do. Okay. Absolutely. Because it's our loved ones, isn't it? Why should you pay a medium? Obviously, this is my work. Yes, come to me, have a reading. That's brilliant. But I'm always encouraging people to do it themselves, because it's about picking up on your senses. So allowing that subtlety. When you feel like you're being watched, ask it, is this my mother? Is it you, mum, or mom, as you say in America? And you could say, show me 3 signs today so I know it's you. Or what do you feel? What do you sense? What do you smell? What do you know? What are you picking up on? Or what thoughts are coming in? What did you just hear when you were washing up then? Did something come in your mind that you were told something's random thought and you were given information? Write it down and see if it happens. So always sort of pushing on it, because obviously with spirit, it can be so subtle that we think it's our imagination. But I would always encourage people to maybe practice, on family or friends. But again, it's so important that you protect, ask for that higher protection. And then obviously, closing down at the end. But again, this is where you could practice with a family or a friend member, and this is where you could allow yourself to sit and write. What do I see? What do I hear? What do I feel? What do I sense? What do I touch? What do I know? Write it down, and you could say, oh, April the 15th, did your dad pass away? Did they have a heart attack? And you could just sort of like, what is this? And you might hear that in your head, or you might have it as a thought, you might see it as a number, or you may see something visual. So write it down, and you could test yourself that way. And then when they validate it back to you, you'll be like, oh, okay, that makes sense then. So that was correct. Oh, how did I know that? And that would be spirit working with you. But it's so imperative that you protect, and then you close down afterwards. So asking for that higher protection, that bubble of protection of, that white light around you. Mm-hmm. And then obviously closing down and asking Archangel Michael, that higher power, to take that energy away, any energy that doesn't belong to me, my family, my home. But definitely, I would say don't be afraid, because this is where we are all spirit and human body. The more open you are, my sister always said I was an open book. But I always say the more open you are, and don't feel like you've got to meditate for 5 hours, standing on your head, chanting Om and all that rubbish. Don't even bother with rituals. You don't need to. Not everybody wants to meditate. My sister would meditate, and that's great. And, when I was a child, when I was a teen, I used to pray for 3 hours a day. Yes, okay, that's brilliant, but we don't all need to do that. Some people want to get up and sing and shout and scream, or some people want to go and eat a donut. So don't feel like you have to do any ritual either. I always say the more simple you keep it with spirit, the more you're going to get. Because if you start doing a ritual, you get so obsessed with the ritual, meditating, that you're actually missing out on them subtleties of them trying to talk to you through that vision, or through that thought in your head, or that voice that you may have just heard, or out of the corner of your eye, you may see some movement, or you may see a face in a pattern. So just don't ever feel like you have to do anything special, because you didn't meditate before you spoke to your loved ones in life. So why would you have to do it now? Meditation, I'm not belittling it, I think is brilliant, but it's not for everybody. Not everybody wants to sit there. Sometimes people want to go out in the car and listen to music, or someone wants to go and ride their motorbike, and that's their way of switching off and allowing, don't feel like you have to be in the house. You could be out in the forest, or you could be in your bed. You could be sat on, watching the telly. Don't ever feel like you have to do a special anything to connect with your loved ones, because they are there. They do live within our world. They're always trying to reach you. So just allow that subtlety. And when you feel them or sense them, that's when you turn around and say, give me them 3 signs so I know it's you. So it could be a birth date, their name, age, anything. But if you do that, then it helps them to then validate, yes, it was me, and I was with you today, and this is me sending you love. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Very cool. How can people reach out to you? How can they find you? What's the best way to do that?
So I have got my page on, and it's called Grieving Souls Unite. I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Grieving Souls Unite on Instagram. So they're great ways to reach me. If you go on my Grieving Souls Unite on my Facebook, you can see my review page. And also I'm on Facebook under my name, Siobhan Smith. So SIOBHAN Smith. So they can reach me that way as well. But if you want to look at my reviews on my Grieving Souls Unite, then that's a brilliant way, because you get to then read about, other people's experiences with me, if that makes sense.
Perfect. Very cool. Siobhan Smith, our guest, thank you so much for coming on and giving us some insights into this. We appreciate it. And folks, again, I hope that brought you I hope that brought the listeners some peace and understanding to dealing with losses that they may have had in their lives. We do have a link up for Siobhan's Facebook page and Instagram page on today's program guide as well. Stay safe. Be kind to one another, folks. We will be back again next week with more of the best in paranormal talk radio. For Tim Dennis, I'm Dave Schrader. You've been listening to Darkness Radio.